This is Out of Bounds. If it's happening in the world of golf, we're talking about it. Coverage, debate, discussion, pro golf and local golf. Let's do it. This is Out of Bounds. And here are your hosts, Nate Sharman and Josh Durso.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Out of Bounds podcast. Josh Durso, Nate Sharman here with you one day before we kick off the 2026 Genesis Invitational. Nate, there is so much to talk about, especially after last week. Two very unexpected winners. Let's start on the PGA Tour, which was the less unexpected winner.
Yeah, Collin Morikawa goes low on Saturday and Sunday and picks up his first win since the 2023 Zozo. And right after that tournament, Josh, he announced that him and his wife, Kat, are expecting. So a really, really cool story from Collin Morikawa. He hits all greens, hits every green on Saturday, shoots that 62 round on Saturday, then follows it up on Sunday with another good round. And gets back in the winner's circle. Amazing to see Collin in the winner's circle.
Yeah, definitely. He's one of those personalities that everybody likes.
Yes.
With that win, he jumps up to number 3 in the FedEx Cup points. Obviously still very early in the season, but a big win nonetheless. Got 700 FedEx Cup points off of that one. Moves up to number 5 in the world. I know you have some thoughts about that. I gotta try to pull it out of you.
Yeah, we know that OWGR is flawed, right? And I think most rankings are flawed at this point with the division of the two tours and just a lot of different things going on. But yeah, the 5th best golfer in the world, and we'll see that probably change this week with unless one of those top dogs win right in the Pacific Palisades. But yeah, really cool story with Collin, and that he's a guy that you watch live. You watch, I've watched him play at the Memorial, I've watched him play at the PGA, and I watched him swing and watch him hit these approach shots, and I'm like, how does this guy not win more? One of the most pretty golf swings, I think, in my mind, on the PGA Tour. And the answer to that is that he just doesn't hit it very far off the tee, right? So he's back a lot, and he's putted poorly these last couple years, right? And he putted better down the stretch at the tournament last week at the AT&T, but he's still lost strokes gained in the putting. He was second in the field, Josh, which puts him about halfway, but he was first in strokes gained approach and first on strokes gained tee to green. So he definitely made up for that. And like I said earlier, he putted better on Saturday and Sunday down the stretch, right, when he needed to most. But yeah, Collin Morikawa, he just mixes bad putting with bad driving, and he was able to kind of figure it out this week. But maybe that putter will get back hotter for him. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, and not going to be in today's episode, but our bag check, we'll be talking about that putter that he used that he actually got from Kurt Kitayama. Was not his putter not even a week prior to that. Just popped in the bag, and voila, he gets it together enough. Like, we talked before we came on here about how it wasn't all roses putting, but he putted well enough down the stretch. And when it comes to winning, that's what matters. You have to do what needs to be done coming down the stretch, and he did exactly that. Interesting note for Collin, 5 out of his 6 stroke play wins in his career have come from behind on the final day. So
yeah, he seems to sort of relish that spot. We've seen Collin these last few years since he's won, right? He's been in really good positions. He was in a good position in Hawaii, and there's some other good spots he was in, and failed to find that win. So he's been sort of the punching bag a little bit, I think, online a little bit when he's in those spots. So it's really, really cool to see him, finish off that victory.
Let's look at the other guys that were in the top 5 there. Minwoo Lee, Sepp Straka, Scotty Scheffler, Tommy Fleetwood, all within a couple strokes. For you, out of those guys, what was the next best story or most surprising outcome? Yeah,
awesome to see Minwoo Lee play well, right? I mean, he's a guy that's been up and down, right? And going off those guys, I'll add one more in Jacob Bridgman. It took him a really long time to play that final hole, and he kind of put Collin Morikawa on ice a little bit, right? But it didn't seem to bother Morikawa as he still made birdie and got the victory. But yeah, it's really, really cool to see Minwoo Lee play well. Also, Sepp Straka, a guy that's you see week in, week out on the PGA Tour, and finish with an eagle and kind of finish with a really good finish to sort of vault him up in the standings, right? So was there a guy you were kind of hoping for too?
I was kind of interested to see Minwoo showing signs of life, because just a few weeks ago, it wasn't that long ago, that you and I were talking about him just not seeming to have it together at all. And now, I think this is either the second or third tournament in a row that, his name's been on that first page of the leaderboard.
Right. Yeah,
definitely showing some signs of form going into the right part of the season.
Yeah, he's a guy that I always root for, right? And on the other side, Akshay Bhatia, I placed a small wager on him on Sunday to win the golf tournament. So when he missed that 6-footer on 16, it was a little bit upsetting to me. But still, he's a fun guy to root for. A lot of question marks around him all weekend, where people were accusing him of anchoring. Right, whenever you see Akshay in the light, leading a golf tournament and stuff like that, you're going to get these sort of accusations. I know it's sort of a gray area, as we were talking before the podcast, and a side with the PGA Tour, you would think they would want to pick a side of whether they want guys to be quote unquote anchoring or not. But yeah, we're still here.
We either allow broomsticks or we do not. There cannot be an in between. I think that's the only way that the PGA Tour is ever going to get around this. Scotty Scheffler put together yet another super impressive Sunday, shoots 63, 3 eagles, 1 round, played the par 5s, 7 under. It's just remarkable stuff all the way around. Yet another insane finish. I think he's up to 18 straight top 10s. I mean, he's just 19. I mean, it just keeps going and going and going.
Yeah, 63 with 3 eagles and 3 bogeys is just sicko behavior, right? I mean, to shoot 63 and do that. Josh, I believe he was 4 under, or he's 3 under through, or 4 under through 5, and then he's on the 6th hole, right? And he's got about a 4-footer kick in, and he misses it to go one more, right? And that just goes to show. He's open putts from everywhere throughout that round. So to miss a short one is okay, but it's still funny to think about how that could have went even lower early on, but then he kept on going and kept on making putts throughout that round. He has a 3-putt, but still he's able to sort of figure that out, and he almost got himself into a playoff in the golf tournament, but Collin Morikawa makes birdie, like I said, on that final hole.
Yeah. So to that end, before we get into the other huge winter news from this past weekend, one note on Pebble: 22 under was the scoring record for the tournament. What do you make of the golf course right now? We were texting a little bit on Sunday, just sort of feeling like obviously a lot of birdies coming down the stretch is good for the television broadcast. Obviously it's exciting. But at the same time, unless there's some pretty significant weather, the golf course almost feels a bit beneath the PGA Tour standard now.
Yeah, and I think we saw that weather sort of come in late, right? They moved the final round up earlier in the morning to avoid that weather, and you might kind of scoff at that at the beginning, but you do see it there where the wind comes up, and I think it was Jacob Bridgman actually couldn't get his ball to stop on the 18th green. That played into him taking forever to finish, but. It's really interesting because they're playing the major there next year, right? And I think that goes to show they're playing the U.S. Open there. So how much they're going to need to toughen that golf course up. They've already talked about how it'll play longer, right? And the rough I'm sure the rough will be a lot longer. But just Josh, just playing this tournament later in the year just makes it so much harder, right? We saw super soft conditions, right, where guys were stopping balls around the hole. That won't happen at the U.S. Open in August. You won't be able to stop the ball in these harder greens, right? And that goes to show why the schedule movements, the possible or maybe positive schedule movements that we'll talk about later, how this could benefit a course like Pebble being played later in the year.
Yeah, I've definitely got some thoughts there, but I'll save them for when we talk about the schedule changes in general. Let's get to what was, I think, the biggest golf story, maybe not just of, this year, but of the last several years. Anthony Kim back in the winner's circle. No one saw it coming. No one expected it, especially given who was in his group.
Yeah. I think Data Golf gave him a 0.1% chance to win that golf tournament on Sunday. He came in the final round 5 shots behind Bryson DeChambeau, I believe, and a couple behind Rahm, or I might have those flipped. But, he goes out there and he shoots 9 under par 63, makes a bunch of birdies down the stretch, wins by 3. Gosh, 1,800 days between victories for Anthony Kim. Yeah. Almost 16 years. He won in 2010 at the Houston Open, and now he wins in 2025 at LIV Adelaide. By far the coolest story that LIV has produced since its inception.
Yeah, and just, I think the big takeaway for me was just, the first real organic story that people got behind with LIV.
Isn't it funny that it comes from sorry to interrupt you, but isn't it cool that it comes from a story where they didn't just throw money at a guy?
Yeah, like that's it right there. Like it's proof that the method that LIV has used to date to try and gain traction and credibility is the opposite of what works. And all they had to do was just lean into your homegrown stars. He didn't go, Anthony Kim didn't go to the PGA Tour. He went to LIV to have his redemption shot there. He's been their guy from the start of this second act of his career. And he wins and he delivers, and he doesn't just, I think it's interesting, he doesn't just win, but watching him play in the back nine of the second 9 of Sunday was thoroughly impressive. He was oozing excitement. He was enjoyable to watch. And that is really like, if there's one thing that golf has been craving, especially since Scottie Scheffler began his reign of dominance, was someone who really like wore their emotions on their sleeve in a way that Scheffler does not. And Anthony Kim absolutely did that. Now, can he sustain it? 40 years old? I don't know. He certainly had all the natural talent and promise, 16 years ago when he was coming into the golf world. No one would have doubted then that he could be a dominant player into his 40s. So maybe still the case. But what do you think? Do you think it's time to start talking about Anthony Kim possibly playing in one or more majors this year?
Yeah, I said it on TikTok and I say it here. Why not? Right? I mean, he clearly moves the needle, right? It's you go back and you watch that round at LIV Adelaide. There was Tiger-like crowds following Anthony Kim.
Yeah,
I think you can draw a similarity. Obviously, they're not the crowds that Tiger draws, but still big, huge crowds watching Tiger go and watching Anthony Kim finish up that round. And Josh, the magnitude of this win. If you know me, I often crush LIV for their playing strength, right? These last couple of years, I've made jokes about Anthony Kim. Did Anthony Kim shoot under par today? I made those jokes where I go watch, and it's just so cool to see Anthony Kim chase down Bryson DeChambeau and Jon Rahm. In my mind, this LIV win for Anthony Kim can be worth 2 wins, right? Because he beat 2 top 5 players in the world in his group. He watched them play, and he watched these two guys. He was behind them all day. He averaged, I think it was right about 20 yards shorter than him all day. So he had to really make up ground in other spots. And he didn't just beat him, Josh. He smoked him. I mean, he shot 9 under par. I think Bryson shot even, and Jon Rahm shot 1 over. He came in the day down by 5, won by 3. It's just amazing. Every statistic you look at is shocking to me. It's so cool.
I mean, I think that's the most impressive thing is like, we're not talking about, a couple random guys on the LIV roster. We're talking about
Peter Uihlein. He beat Jon Rahm.
2 of the objectively best players on earth right now, no matter what your opinion is of LIV or the PGA Tour or anything in between. But with regard to that majors question, my gut feeling is, heck yeah, get him in.
Sure,
get him in there. Why not? I don't think it's as much of a stretch, though, as some people are making it sound like. If he stays in the top 3 in LIV, he can get into the U.S. Open. So there's one. The Masters, to me, seems like the least likely. He would just need a special invitation, or he would need to get inside the top 150 in OWGR. I guess if he manages to win another LIV event, maybe that would push him down inside of that. I'm not sure. It depends, I guess, what the field looks like. PGA Championship, if he maintains form, he can get an invitation. Again, to me, that seems like a pretty low bar. They've given out invitations in the past. It wouldn't be that complicated or unusual. And then the Open Championship, last major of the year, to me, that one seems like all but a lock because the top 5 in the LIV standings get into that one. Again, with the LIV standings side of it, whether it's the top 3 or the top 5, it's not just the guys, the top 5, and that's it. If you are already a qualifier of the event, you don't count a part of that group. So it's the top 3 or top 5 who don't automatically qualify for those 2 majors get in. I think he can manage to stay in that. I think he can manage to stay range because I would assume guys like Bryson and Rahm are going to be in that top 3 to 5 range, which automatically extends out your LIV position to, upwards of like 7 or maybe 8, right? To get in. I don't know. To me, it seems totally plausible that everyone should want to see it. It would be cool. And then I would just love to see your reaction to whatever he chooses to wear.
Because, we can't wear shorts, so that's good.
Yeah, he would not.
He has to wear pants.
He will have to wear pants. It will be interesting to see what he chooses because if there is anything that one, I guess, could be critical of this past week, it would be the choice of short that he wore. But other than that, awesome stuff. Let's get back to a little bit of the schedule talk here that we've had going on. We alluded to it a little with Pebble and the condition of it and how much scoring there was, but it looks imminent now, not only based on the Tiger press conference that we had this past, or I should say the other day, but also from some reporting by Front Office Sports and Golf Week. The PGA Tour is planning to make some pretty significant changes starting next year. It's not going to be a full rollout in 1 year. It's going to be kind of like a phased thing. I'm guessing that means they still haven't figured out how sponsors are going to be handled, because one of the big changes is going to be moving to a later start. So after the Super Bowl, getting out of the way of the NFL playoffs, which makes complete sense. Moving Pebble, the American Express, possibly the Genesis, which is going to be coming up this week, to later in the season, the summer, which, speaking of summer, the PGA Tour is apparently talking about owning the summer. So they want to be the sporting event that people watch during the summer, especially after the NBA and NHL playoffs wrap, which makes total sense. Capture that while you can. And then, of course, the thing that you and I have talked about a bunch, especially around playoff time, PGA Tour playoff time, get into more major cities during the prime part of your season. And it seems like that's what they're going to do. That's at least what Front Office Sports, Golf Week, they're all reporting it at this point. So it seems like we're moving in that direction. When you hear all of that, is there anything in particular that really piques your interest?
I think it makes a ton of sense, right? Playing in and what really piques my interest, Josh, is playing in California late in the year, but you get these final round finishes that finish in that primetime window. That gets people back at their house, right? On a Sunday afternoon, they're probably playing golf. They're probably playing golf. They're with their family. They're having picnics, right? You play this final round in California, you allow for it to be later in the day. And I think people are back in front of their televisions, right? So I think it would only help ratings in my mind. It's something I would like to see too.
Yeah. And I think the one, for me, the one thing that I am not crazy about with how the West Coast swing plays out is the West Coast swing winds up being just the wettest part of the golf season. And it just, these tournaments, part of the reason why Pebble, I think, was such a birdie fest was just how wet it was and how there wasn't enough wind to really bring down scoring. And if you're playing it like they will be next year for a major a little later in the year, fine. But I think on the calendar every year, that event should be pushed later in the season, just because it would make far more sense to be playing that then rather than playing it in the beginning of the year when a lot of people still aren't thinking about golf. So, move it later, so into that prime window when it is. Here's what I want to get your take on. We've been hearing all kinds of chatter about the Players becoming golf's fifth major, and Rory doing a little teasing a couple days ago about the idea of moving the PGA Championship back to August, which in his estimation, he said would be the best case scenario. So between those two, which would you rather have?
As a PGA Championship guy, I've gone to a couple different ones here in Rochester, right? And, I would love to see that event back in August, right? Because I think if you run into that, you run into a limitation on cities. I know we're coming back here to Oak Hill for the PGA Championship, but yeah, I think August would be better. I don't love making the Players a major. I think it could stand on its own without it being a major. I think people respect it enough, but I would love to see the PGA Championship back in August. What do you think, Josh?
You know what? It's interesting because when I was thinking about it, initially I felt like I was on let's make the Players golf's fifth major. Because to me, it opens up the heart of the golf season. And it is, it essentially is golf's fifth major. It is the fifth most important golf tournament to most
Definitely
guys. And also, I think about what Rory said last week, or maybe it wasn't last week, but he basically made the argument that the Players has a better identity than the PGA Championship does right now. So if we are going to move the PGA Championship to August, which after I had some time to really digest both ideas and think about them, I think that is the better option. Move the PGA Championship to August, give it a real identity within the context of the PGA Tour's playoff structure. And then that, I think, is the best case scenario. I don't really see how it could be other way.
I will say, though, the Players Championship, they do have a pretty good slogan for it being in March. March is going to be major, right? So that does work.
Well, and I also think that plays into the whole idea that you couldn't possibly, I don't know that you could make that the fifth major without moving the PGA Championship. Right?
Yeah, and then you put that, if you were to put the PGA Championship in August, right, then you have the Open Championship also be playing in August. So I think you have some travel concerns there, right?
Yeah, it would be interesting to see. What's going to be interesting to me is it seems like there's a desire to get the playoffs done before the NFL season starts,
which I agree with.
But there's also this desire to move some events around so that they're later in the season.
Yeah, I mean, it's all sounds really good, but it's you run out of weeks, right? And you have sponsors to abide by, right? And you need to cram this golf in, right? So I think that's going to be really interesting to look at how this schedule does work out.
Not only that, but I think for some players it could be a real grind going from late May through, essentially like maybe early September.
You'll see guys playing a ton of weeks in a row, right? And that's just with all the travel too. If they do have a West Coast swing, right? It invites a lot of fatigue, right?
Certainly seems like it's plausible. Okay, so let's talk about the Genesis. Nate, run us through what we've got going on this weekend.
Yeah, Riviera Country Club for the second elevated event of the year. Speaking of some fatigue, right? The second elevated event in 2 weeks. Right? One thing about the Genesis that I like, it's one of the only 3 elevated events with a cut, right? So we have I think it's about 80 guys, and they cut down to about 60. So they're only cutting, 15, 20 guys, but it's still a cut. The Genesis, the API, and the Memorial, all 3 player run tournaments, right? With Tiger Woods at the helm for the Genesis and those other 2 tournaments. Gosh, I was doing some looking into Riviera a little bit. They're playing the Olympics here in 2028, and I think that's really cool, right? My mind is on the Olympics, right? And I was doing a little bit more digging because how much Olympics is going on. Did you remember that there's a mixed event?
Yes.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I don't understand how anyone's going to beat Scotty Scheffler or Nelly Korda, but that's going to be difficult.
I mean,
I think Tommy Fleetwood and Charlie Hull are going to have something to say, though.
It's possible.
And Minwoo and Minji, there's a lot of cool pairings.
There's a lot of interesting storylines that can come out of that.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun. I'm sorry to go on a sidebar there about the Olympics, but the past champs the last few years, it's really interesting. Last year, if you remember correctly, they didn't play at Riviera. They had those wildfires in LA, right? So they played up at Torrey Pines again for the year. Ludwig Aberg won that tournament. 2024, you have Hideki Matsuyama, who played absolutely incredible on that final day, shot 62 and chased down some of those guys to win. And the year before that is even more interesting. Max Homa, who is playing on a sponsor's exemption this week, Josh. Yeah. It's pretty cool. The LA kid is playing, would never miss Riviera in a golf tournament he's won before. Unfortunately, he's not qualified by merit, but he is still in the event.
Yeah, he's in a tough spot. He's in a really tough spot. Yeah, when you look at this, 27 of the 30 top players in the world, they're going to be there. So this is going to be a star-studded event for sure. Winner? Do we have a winner pick?
Yeah, I'm going with Tommy Fleetwood. I think he's right around that 20-1, 15, 20-1 number, right? We saw him play in his first tournament of the season on the PGA Tour. He's like Rory. He'll play over in the Euro Tour to start the year. He was T4 at Pebble. He fired a 66 on Sunday, came up really strong towards the end. So, gonna go with Tommy Ladd to keep winning on the PGA Tour. Got his first win at the end of the year last year and get another one this week.
Yeah, you know what? Remember what I said a couple weeks ago about Ludwig? Don't pick him.
Yeah,
don't pick him. Don't do it. I'm going to say that this week about Scotty Scheffler. Ooh. Don't pick him. Don't pick him. He has historically not played well here. This is not an event where this is not a course where he's played well. He might struggle to keep his top 10 streak going this week. I think it's possible.
He'll just shoot 65 on Sunday and get in the top 10.
Yeah, probably. But when I'm looking at who I think might have a chance at winning this week, it's a guy that we haven't seen much of, but hey, he's always around at Riviera. Patrick Cantlay.
Ooh.
He's sitting at 27-1. He's
one of those guys that hasn't won in almost 4 years on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, but you know what?
2022.
When he contends, he comes out of nowhere. There is no talk or build up to him. You just look at the leaderboard Saturday morning and you're like, oh shit, there he is. He's back. And you know what? I think that's where it is. Do you have a value pick?
I know this one's going to sound a little crazy. I know not a guy you love, but Wyndham Clark. He was T13 last week. He's starting to play a little bit better. He's a guy that I think you need length at Riviera, right? And he's a guy that certainly has it with that club head speed. So I think Wyndham Clark, not necessarily to win the golf tournament. Whenever I talk about long shots, it's not to win. I don't love paying that huge number. It's just to play well. He's definitely in some of my DFS lineups this week.
Okay, so I've got 2 value picks, and I think I would feel strongly enough about either of these to bet a couple bucks on either of them winning, or just throwing them in a lineup of some sort. First up is Chris Goddard at 33-1. Him at 33-1.
Yeah,
feels outrageous. Like, it just feels like those are odds that shouldn't even exist. He hits the ball an absolute mile.
Yeah,
he's
a gamer.
Like, he's hot, and that's just, I think that's one of the things that you have to look at in terms of this kind of an event. And then also Justin Rose. He's sitting at 40-1. What's to say that, I think a couple weeks ago when he won, we were talking about, his fitness and how far he hits the ball and how he's still able to keep up with the young guys. He's no slouch. He could be around on Sunday, and if he is, he's dangerous. He could win. You
I
really
really
could.
get worried about fatigue at this tournament. I mean, these golfers have played so much in this last few weeks, right? Especially last week. And I know Justin Rose, and we talk so much about his fitness, how he carries around that hyperbolic chamber, right? And does the PEMF maps and stuff. And, he's a 40-year-old, but he's in a 25-year-old body, right? So not just Justin Rose, but I think a lot of these guys the fatigue factor could set in, right?
It definitely
Not just
could.
the physical side, but the mental side too.
Yeah, and I would also say that, Riviera, if you've listened to Tiger Talk over the years about the golf course, it's one of the more physically daunting golf courses to walk for the players. So, that also could definitely key into that a little bit. Nate, I've got a prop for you because that's been the trend line the last few weeks.
I'll get this one wrong too, don't worry.
3 players, same odds. In this case, all 3 of these guys are sitting at 75-1 to win. They are actually dead last. However, we're not talking about pick to win. We're just talking about who's going to have the best finish among them. The players are Max Homa, Nick Taylor, or JJ Spawn.
Oh, man, that's been interesting, right? We talked about Max Homa and the trials and tribulations he's been through, right? I'm a JJ Spawn guy. I've always really liked him. I think the way he carries himself on the golf course and the way he plays has been good. So he's a guy I always root for. So I think it's JJ Spawn for me. I think he's ready to sort of crack out. We haven't seen him really play well. He did play well at the Ryder Cup. We haven't seen him really, really play well this year yet.
We haven't, no.
What would you go with in those 3?
You know what? I actually leaning towards Nick Taylor, honestly.
Canadian, I like it.
I feel like I've been waiting for Max Homa to show us something for a few weeks now, and it just hasn't happened. And JJ Spawn, I just haven't seen enough of to make even an educated guess on. So my gut tells me to go with Nick Taylor.
We could see Max Homa play well though this week, back in his hometown, playing a home game, right? A course that he's won before, a course that he likes, a course that he's grew up playing. AJ Spawn, I think you could put in that similar category. He's from California as well. I don't know exactly where he's from, but I think you could see Max Homa play well. He's comfortable here, probably sleeping in his own bed, right? Maybe got some home cooking.
Maybe that's the secret to it. I know golf would, the world of golf would certainly like to see him win or even contend for that matter.
For sure.
Just to show some form again. Hey, that is going to do it for this episode of the pod. If you want to see more, follow us over on TikTok. We're posting there in between episodes and throughout the week. And of course, it's an easy way to let us know what you're thinking about the things we're talking about every week here on the show. Hope everybody has a great weekend, and you know the drill. Whether it's down the middle or out of bounds, keep on swinging.